Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, every morning when I wake up, one of the first things that I do is I take a look at the news, and then I take a look at the markets, silver, the stocks, all that kind of stuff, right? The bonds. And then this morning I wake up and I'm like, holy smokes, look at this. Silver is above $58 an ounce. It made it as high as roughly $58.25 or so. So it got me to thinking. I missed an article or a story here, maybe a week back or so. It had to do with COP30, and it's the forum where they talk about climate change, how they're going to combat global warming, CO2, and all that kind of stuff. And I started thinking about silver, and I started thinking about a little bit of research that I did a while back on how much silver is there actually on the Earth's surface above ground, and how much approximately is there left to mine inside of the Earth's crust. And do we have enough silver, just that one metal, just one thing, to be able to accomplish net zero? And from my own personal research, it's that we don't have enough silver to be able to accomplish net zero in any way or format that they put it to us. So if a layman like me, if ChatGPT can tell you that there's not enough silver, then why are they still spouting this lie that we can hit net zero by 2050 or 2030 or whatever year it is? It doesn't matter what year it is. We will never hit net zero with the available resources that we have here on Earth today. So I went about to ask ChatGPT just a few basic questions. And remember, I've done this research. I did a video about this a few years ago, at least a few years ago. But it's so much easier through ChatGPT because it takes all of the information that is available on the internet and it gets it just in a matter of seconds. So we're just going to ask it a few simple questions. And one of those questions is, how much silver is there above and below ground on the Earth in ounces? Or let's put in troy ounces. Okay, let's see what it comes up with. No, I don't want to log in. Stay logged out. Okay, so it's searching. Okay, so here it is right here. So about 55.9 billion ounces have been mined since the beginning of time. But how much is there left above ground right now, and how much is there left below ground that we can still mine? That's what we're looking for. What about silver still below ground in the crust, unmined? There's roughly 640,000 metric tons, which converts over to 20.6 billion troy ounces today. So we know that there's still 21 billion troy ounces of silver underground that still can be mined. Now remember, we go through about 1.2, 1.3 billion ounces a year. So just that alone tells you that silver is on its way to being an endangered species if it's not already. But let's find out how much there is above ground. Okay, so here they say, according to the Silver Institute from the data of 2025, the total identifiable silver bullion inventories, i.e. silver held in vaults, exchanges, depositories that is trackable, stood at about 1,239 million troy ounces, which is about, let's say, 2.5 billion troy ounces. So there's about 2.5 billion troy ounces above ground that's liquid, that's ready to use and physical. Full stop, ladies and gentlemen. The additional 1.3 or so billion ounces would be we, the stackers that hold physical in their own possession, and that number is not accounted for in this 1.2 or so billion ounces. And then there's about 21 billion below ground. So altogether, there's about 23.5 billion ounces or troy ounces of silver in the entire Earth. Now we're going to ask it, how much silver is required in order to go net zero using solar, windmills, EVs, AI, and everything else that has to do with going net zero? All right, so listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to cut to the chase. I'm not going to be reading every little thing. You guys can do this yourself. It's very easy. 2.2, this is how much silver we would need just for solar panels. 2.2 million metric tons, which is already several times larger than the current known global silver reserves. And they go on to say, add to that silver usage in vehicles, electronics, and grid components, etc., like batteries and things like that, chips, microchips for AI. Even if silver per EV is only roughly 2 ounces per EV, 1 billion EVs would use 25 to 50 billion grams, which equals 25,000 to 50,000 metric tons. Combined with infrastructure and ancillary electronics, total silver demand in this scenario could easily exceed 2 to 2.5 million metric tons over the transition period. By contrast, current reserves for everything is about 640,000 metric tons. We're falling about 75% short of what we need in order to go net zero. And there's nowhere else to get the silver unless we bring it from outer space. And here it goes on to say, under business as usual, with current silver intensive tech, achieving a full global net zero scenario could demand several times the silver we currently know to be economically recoverable. That doesn't necessarily mean it's impossible, it says, but it strongly implies major pressure on supply, incentives for substitution, less silver intensive materials, which that's not going to happen because silver is the only metal that can do what it does with the efficiency in which it does it. It says aggressive recycling or technological breakthroughs. There will have to be some serious technological breakthroughs in order for us to be able to achieve net zero with only 25% of the silver that we would need right now should we go to net zero right now. We only have 25% of the silver that's needed. So what does that mean, ladies and gentlemen? What does that mean that if we only have 25% of the silver that's needed in order to go net zero in the entire world, what has to happen? One of two things. The world population has to be reduced, or your standard of living has to be reduced by about 50 to 75%. That's what they don't want to tell you because we don't have, and it's not only silver, it's everything else. We do not have the resources on Earth in order to go net zero. What they want to do is they want to control every aspect of your life. They want to issue you a digital ID, put you on a digital currency with a digital wallet, and then be able to control through programming the currency in your wallet, be able to control what you can and cannot buy. Why do you think that all of these articles that I've covered in the past about 15-minute cities this, 15-minute cities that you're not going to need a car to go from here to there, that you're only going to be able to fly maybe once a year if you're lucky, if it's within the country, and maybe every 5 years or so if you're going to be going outside of the country? Why do you think they're pushing so hard for this digital ID? It's because without the digital ID, the digital currency is really not going to be possible. So this net zero stuff, whenever you hear it, do your own research. This is very easy research to do right now because not only does ChatGPT tell you, but it gives you the sources that it derived it from. The number that I came up with, silver in the ground, was like 17 billion ounces. And then I came up with at that time with about 3.5 billion ounces above ground, giving me around 20 to 21 billion ounces of silver altogether. And by doing my own research, I was only off by about 2 billion, which is pretty good, I think. But this thing is able to scour even more research than I'm able to do as a human. And it came pretty close to what I came up with. Again, this net zero stuff is not attainable. They're doing this in order to be able to control everything that you do so that they can do what they want to do. And just to have a little bit of fun, let's ask it how much CO2 in ppm is optimal for plant growth. Got tongue-tied there. What is the optimal amount of CO2 for plant growth? Optimal CO2 range for most C3 plants. And C3 plants are, they say the majority of crops like rice, wheat, grains, etc., beans, stuff like that, right? Is 800 to 1200 ppm. That is the optimum range. Now for C4 plants, it's also 800 to 1200 ppm. Why not higher than 1200 ppm? Well, actually, the higher it gets above that optimal range, like between 800 and I would say 1000, 1200 ppm, it actually starts to work against it. But when they tell you that we have too much CO2 in the atmosphere, what they're telling you is that they don't want you to be able to control how much food is grown on the earth. Because up to 800 ppm, it's just fine for humans to breathe. It's just fine, actually optimal for plant growth, which means that we would be able to feed more people. Would lower CO2 be catastrophic? No, but modern agriculture would have to work harder. More fertilizer would be needed, which means more production, which means we're going to need to make CO2 when we're making the fertilizer, more irrigation, higher land use, more intensive management. How are we going to do all this, ladies and gentlemen, when we only have 25% of all of the resources that we need in the entire earth to be able to go net zero? We would not be able to do this unless the population of the earth was substantially lower than it is now, or unless we were living a standard of living cumulatively speaking. I mean, the whole world, not just one country, living a standard of living that was 50 to 75% less than what it is right now. I'll leave the rest for you to go take a look at. This net zero stuff, it's never going to work. They've always known this. It's just being used as a measure of being able to control the population. Having said that, I hope you're having a great Tuesday. Remember that this Sunday we're going to have our Christmas tree lighting ceremony where I'll be giving away a few gifts and some silver. So hope to see you there. God bless every one of you. God bless America. I love you all. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.